This is not a gameplay video, this is just me talking about my ideas for StarCraft 3. It will never happen, I'm sure of that. And even if it somehow does, I will never get any credit for it or any monetary compensation. But the chances of StarCraft 3 being a thing are so slim, especially with my ideas, that I'll just put them out there. So originally I said, I don't think they have left themselves with many characters for StarCraft 3 if it ever was to be a thing. But when I went to take a shower, I suddenly got ideas started flying into my head about StarCraft 3 and how it could be connected to StarCraft 1 and 2. And so a few of the key points of the story, a few of them, doesn't mean the entirety of it, would be Gerard Dugal is somehow discovered to be a cerebrate or in a cerebrate's mass, because cerebrates weren't necessarily singular beings. Cerebrate was something that a Zerg, some sort of Zerg mind that could attempt to eat other minds, and so it needed like the body, and then it tried to consume it. And they played around with that in one DLC of StarCraft 1. So there's some sort of leftover cerebrate that's in hiding, and it gets Dugal's body, and he tries to eat him, and Dugal, because he's going to be in combat with the cerebrate, he gains some sort of, even just a low level of psionic power, and he contacts Stukov. And so that would be one of the acts of the campaign. As Stukov with Infested, and there's the gameplay side. As Stukov with Infested, the campaign would be probably, again, Protoss, Zerg, and Terran. As Zerg, much of it would be as Infested, where the gameplay would be different. There would be some innovation, there would be something story-specific, like a infested planetary fort which can walk, and it's a call down and whatever. There would be more emphasis on uniqueness of each of the races and each of its subgroups that would be present in the story to spice it up. And so you would be like crossing planets with a mass of infested Terrans and whatever, and there would be more flavor added to infested units because the co-op version of Infested was very bland. And even if justifiably, because, it's the forced evolutionary virus is a new thing in StarCraft 2. And it managed to progress some since StarCraft 1. In StarCraft 3, it could have progressed much more and, enabled infection of other things and organisms. So you would go across planets, and then you get the signal, and you go and investigate a Stukov, and you find out, oh, it's actually Gerard. Oh, look at that. And there would be, a chance to bring him back, even if in a different form. That will be the first part of the story. The second would be looking at, because what have Terran campaigns focused at so far? The Dominion. Somebody who controls some sort of empire battling it out with others. Originally it was Arcturus and Confederacy, then Arcturus and Raynor in StarCraft 2. So in StarCraft 1 it's Arcturus and Confederacy, in StarCraft 2 it's Arcturus and Raynor. And so in StarCraft 3, what's the Empire of Human going to be in conflict with? Not the UED. I think UED would be like a separate expansion to keep it in line with StarCraft 1, how UED was in Brood War. So let's not put it in base game. But in base game, I think it would be very interesting to put a new type of, not gameplay, but a new type of formula for the StarCraft campaign, at least. Where in StarCraft 1, there's a focus on you doing everything. It's like there's little automation, or, well, there is some, but how do I put it? I think in StarCraft 1 there was more focus on the individual, just because, as you can see on the screen, because of the engine, and that resulted in like a more claustrophobic experience. and everything was smaller. There were smaller unit counts and whatever, and it was more individualistic. In StarCraft 2, it became more mass because of the engine, but also because of the gameplay design. So there was more focus on numbers, and there were big shifts, and the combat had to be you had to be very attentive. And because of that, I think the next step should be in StarCraft 3, in the both the Infested Terran, so Zerg, part of the campaign, and the Terran campaign. In the Terran, you would be playing through or as Valerian Mengsk. So he's now the Emperor of the Dominion, but it's not the only it is the biggest, aside from UED, but it is not the only big group of Terrans in the, what is it, not Core Hall, the star system that StarCraft primarily takes place in. And so you have the Kalmoria. Then you have pirates, I think they're still a thing. And then there's one other group, which I don't remember, but it is there. And so there would be perhaps some like diplomacy going on with these. And then something would have to appear, something to fight. I haven't thought much about that, but the core gameplay idea of that would be, because Valerian is the emperor, and you never got to play as the emperor, as an emperor, all right? You got to play as a queen, it's fine, but a combat one, not just sitting back. Then you got to play as a commander of rebels. I'm trying to bring up the notables, like the important gameplay shifts, in my opinion, and gameplay and narrative. And then you got to play as a commander of rebels from a rebel ship, floating around, not really having any base except for that ship. And so I think in StarCraft 3 for Terrans, it would be a very, very good change to allow the Terran part of the campaign to be playable in the form of like a grand military commander. So say, it would still probably be like a harvest resources, train units and whatever. But there would be a difference in that you would, as Valerian, the thing about Dominion is you can't hope to rule it alone. You have to have generals, you have to have lieutenants, which is what Arcturus tried to do in StarCraft 1 as well, with Duke before he got killed. And then in StarCraft 2 in co-op, they added and in Nova missions, they added the woman general. So in StarCraft 3, Mengsk, Valerian Mengsk appoints, some generals, and some are recommended, and some he chooses out of his own volition. Probably just a few. And then you would have this system where ever since StarCraft 2, there was always some sort of customization in the campaign. So in here, you get to pick the commanders or generals that serve with you on specific missions. You get to choose their, say, army composition, though they do have limitations. That's where the thing comes. And while they have their individual skill sets and they progress as you go on missions with them, they have some abilities that can not be changed. So they're like a baseline. So you can always count on them having these abilities. And there will be missions where they can't use a certain ability, or some side objective is preventing them from using some ability, stuff like that. And you could give them orders. So much like in co-op where you can ping, attack, defend, and whatever, you could, and this is what I thought about, that would have to be designed. You could switch them between two modes primarily: dependent and autonomous. Autonomous means that they try and do the most logical thing that would depend on the design of the AI, but the dependent would be that they make units, they may get defenses, but when it comes to abilities, they will not use them on their own. So like they would have cooldowns and whatever, and you could see them on the top bar. So say somebody has a rocket barrage, and so the rocket barrage And so the rocket barrage can be like, if you set it to autonomous, the AI would use the rocket barrage where it sees fit, or maybe on some pre no, probably just where it sees fit. But independent, you would get these additional cooldown buttons where you get to order like General, I don't know, General Schaefer, use rocket barrage there. It's like, yes, sir. Pow, 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 pow. Uh, Lieutenant Carmine, call down unit drop pods over here. We need to hold this location. It's like, yes, sir. Not just unit drop pods. The cooldowns could be something like amazing. Call down supply bunkers, from Arcturus, or like call down bunker drop pods, or call down a fucking planetary fort. What do I know? And the fort just lands with a big smack, does 500 damage in a big area, and has like extra armor plates on itself, and maybe it could even move at a very slow pace, and things like that. So you would have those generals and lieutenants by your side, and maybe you could promote and demote them as you see fit for specific missions, or like maybe through story twists, like exclusive upgrades for the rest of the campaign. This guy is promoted, this guy gets to sit on the bench, and things like that. And that's for the Terran one. And to be frank with you, I got no ideas for the Protoss, but instead I got an idea for another Zerg one. Actually, maybe it would fit. No. I did get an idea for another Zerg one. And the idea was, by the way, this is a really quick speedrun that you see on the screen, and I couldn't pull it off. I tried, but Defense Matrix didn't work for me, so I had to mass everything down here, get a siege tank. I tried to play StarCraft 1, the campaign that is, on the hard difficulty. But anyway, I got an idea about... I looked at Heroes of the Storm and what it did, or what they did with some of the skins, like, oh, what if? And most of them were just a what if, like a fun thing. Here, let's do something with this. Like, oh, sure, we combine universes. Why not combine the possibilities? Yeah? But there is some sort of, I think, even feasible argument to be made that one notable character in Heroes of the Storm, Tychus, could be returned into StarCraft in StarCraft 3. So in StarCraft 2, he is presumably executed by a shot to the head, which is reflected in his Heroes of the Storm skin where he's infested. See where I'm headed? Where his visor is cracked. Now, I don't think he has it down when he tries to shoot Kerrigan, but, maybe he tries to, like, lower it as he's being shot, and so it cracks. Anyway, when the Queen of Blades was de-infested, the swarm was leaderless and went feral or something, for a short while before Kerrigan returned, And so, during that time, some sort of entity, some sort of infestor, could have just walked right up to the big hive and looked around, and there's nobody here. Oh, what's that? That's a body. Oh my, it would be a shame if something infested it and brought it back to life. And because that happened while the infestor was feral, Tychus is not in Queen of Blades' psychic list. And so he, like, I don't know, he starts exerting some psychic power of his own, feral at that, and dominates a few overseers and a few zerglings maybe, and just gets off the planet and fucks off before Warfield arrives, and turns the planet into a big, dangerous, lava-filled trench with a fortress and angry marines and nukes. And then he comes back around in StarCraft 3, causing trouble for one of the, groups that Valerian is maybe having diplomatic talks with. Yeah? And see how it's now getting interconnected? I think that would have been cool. And maybe there could have been like a hero-focused campaign, but with units. So a hero focus, but there would be more of a focus on army and buildings than on the hero. It's like humans love not conflicting statements, but the specific word. I can't remember what the specific word is. Counter, not arguments. In Czech, it's protiklady. Let me look it up. Ah, of course. Humans love opposites. So, um, it would be a hero-focused campaign, but there would be a lot of focus on buildings, army as well. And there could be some unique things related to a feral-infested tychus and whatever. Maybe he could have like a specific, unique strain of the FEV, which would, for example, allow him to infest siege vehicles or something. I don't know. That would be up for discussion, but that's all the ideas that I have for StarCraft 3. And then, if StarCraft 3 would do well in the expansion, UED would happen. Just because. Brood War 2, the Electric Boogaloo. I never use that joke. This is probably the first time that I ever have. But those are my ideas for StarCraft 3. Of course, it's never going to happen. Definitely not when most of the people who made this on screen and StarCraft 2 have left the company or, have met a different fate. And it's sad. You can't even attribute the failures of the company to greed, because even greed would have in its best interest to keep something profitable. So in other words, keep it of high quality, if high quality is what made it profitable in the first place and keeps bringing in profits. It's just like malice. Just straight up malice. It's not even like negligence of not caring about the franchise or the product. It's malice. Well, at least... No, well, not at least. I don't wish him anything bad, but it seems to not be paying off for Mr. Robert Kotick. This kind of approach of negligence and I can have all the money in the world and who cares what happens to the franchise, just pander to Twitter. Ha ha ha. Yeah, how did that pay out? Anyway, those are my ideas. And they'll never change anything, because even if at some point Activision goes bankrupt, the IP will probably be bought by Microsoft or somebody who never will have any interest in replicating the experience. So it's hard to give up. It is hard to give up on a franchise you really like, or not really, but I quite like the story and the possibilities. And it's really hard to give up. It's like, it will never be the same again. And somebody said to me, hey, you can never replicate experiences from your childhood. I know, but I'm not asking to replicate such experiences. I just want to replicate the quality that was available when I was younger. I'm not saying I played this when I was younger. I didn't. I only played it like 2 years ago. But my point is, I think it falls into that category for many. And for me as well, but for different reasons, not because of childhood experiences and of how awesome it was. So anyway, it's really hard to give up on the chance that somehow, at some point, sometime near in the future, it may come back in better quality or same quality as before, with, as if nothing happened. But that's all it will probably ever be. Wishful thinking. My shoulder hurts. Anyway, that's all. I gotta go dry some dishes now.